and welcome back to the 40% Better podcast. As always, I'm Bill, your host, and we're going to be talking about things related to leadership, specifically in the world of technology. Mr. Craig Taylor has graciously accepted our invitation to come join us today. And just because his background says laugh and learn and hoot, I'm sure there is a great story there that I'm going to want to hear. And before we get to that, the first question I always ask guests is, how did you get started in leadership?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess the very first exposure, well, that's not true. We talked about one story I was going to tell. I'm going to go a little bit further back. When I was in my teens, at my church, I formed a youth group. There wasn't one. And I said there should be. And so I talked to a couple parents of kids in the church, and I said, shouldn't we have a youth program? And they said, yes, but you can't run it yourself. So the smart person that said that, I said, well, maybe you could volunteer. And so, yes, she did. So we started a youth group, and I remember we had elections and who was going to run it and who was going to set agendas, all that stuff. So that was probably the very, very first moment of leadership. But the real educational story that I'd love to share is rooted in a bit of a failure, in my own opinion, at the time. My dad was a Rotarian, Bill, and we had Rotary students visit and live with us for three to 4 months, sometimes 6 months, all through my youth. Since I was 5 years old, I can remember Birgitta from Sweden and Åsa from Uppsala and someone from France and all these different parts of the world. They would come and live with us as part of a Rotary Youth Exchange program. When you turn 18, you can apply to the local Rotary Club where my dad was a Rotarian. And so I did. And there was probably a handful of candidates, 5 or 6 candidates. And we had hosted all these Rotary students. So I don't know if that played into me. I think I treated it seriously, but I thought maybe I was a shoo-in or something. I don't know. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if I go back. That's a long time ago, probably close to almost 40 years. And I didn't get selected. 2 other kids were selected to go abroad. And I was given this, what I consider second place prize, right? Trip to a Rotary Youth Leadership Away Camp called RYLA, Rotary Youth Leadership Award, RYLA. It's a whole weekend where kids from all different parts of Canada, and all this happens all over the world, US, everywhere. They get together for a weekend and they have a set course of leadership training. And what a great second prize that was. I still remember it to this day. The win-win, we did the prisoner's dilemma where you're split into 2 groups. You nominate one negotiator. They come into a special room and you're negotiating something. And if you both negotiate in good solidarity with one another, you'll get 1 each of whatever you're negotiating for, 1 and 1. If one person negotiates in faith and one doesn't, in other words, they say, we're going to backstab the opponent and not sign up for this deal, then you get 3 if they agreed to the deal, and they get nothing. Or you get 2. Sorry, it's 2 and nothing. If you both agree, you both get 2 or something like that. If you both disagree or backstab each other, everyone gets 0, right? And so how do you negotiate? And I think there's something to do with a prisoner's dilemma here. But it taught me about the value of win-win outcomes and trying to find common ground and trying to empathize with your opponent and recognize it. Maybe the Stephen Covey or whomever said, listen first to understand, then to be understood. All of those things at a very young age. This had a huge impact on me when I was 18. And I fell in love with sort of self advancement in leadership, to learn how to be a good leader. And how to find that common ground and how to negotiate, all those good things that come from being a good listener and being a good leader. So that's where the first start of it was, from a point of failure, actually.
Yeah. So that's interesting that the Rotary experience and all that stuff, that's super impactful. When you got out into the professional world, what was that like?
So in the professional world, it's an interesting story because I have a degree in psychology. So the degree opened doors to management for me, middle management, because I'd proven I could learn things and I could apply things. But right out of college, I knew I wasn't going into psychology. I went into cybersecurity. And I was working for a small startup, a firewall vendor in the very early days of the internet. We were convincing companies they needed a firewall to plug into this thing called the internet. And then we talked about you need antivirus, and then we talked about you need, to train employees. Like each era, there was something else that people were reticent to do to keep themselves
Right,
safe
right.
online. But I went from 6 months of support analyst to leading the department because when you're a team of six, I was it for support, and I learned what I could about cybersecurity, about TCP/IP, about all the internet protocols because we had to support this thing, this firewall. And then quickly, we grew so fast that they needed someone to hire other support people to keep the show running, to talk to and interpret from engineering what support was being wanting and what support, was trying to tell engineering they needed and vice versa and interpret. So I guess with my communication and leadership, I was promoted into leading that organization. I was a manager at that firm. And then, one of the nice parts about having to suddenly leave a position of security where you sort of got yourself in a path and there's really not a lot of advancement. My wife at the time just got her PhD and had an opportunity to go to the US. We were in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, and she had an opportunity at the Mayo Clinic. So I said, we have to take that. There's no way. So I resigned. I moved to Minnesota. At that time, my first daughter was born, and took some time off work because I wanted to spend some time with her. And then I got a job in security at a local managed service provider in Minnesota. And I was sort of leading the conversations around cybersecurity. I did some Y2K work. Um, but along the way, I did a leadership class in a program called Up with People. I think it was based on leadership in the Christian community.
Hmm.
Uh, More recently, at another MSP, I was selected or nominated to go into this program called Leadership Seacoast. And it's an exposure leadership program where it teaches you about 6 or 7 distinct parts of the community. One is social services, one is healthcare, one is law enforcement, one is the trades, right? We went to a trade school and learned about all the different programs for young people that are empty. They need more people in the trades.
Right,
There's not
right.
enough people going into it. And so it was a wonderful exposure to, New England society in the seacoast here. And it had guest speakers talking about leadership and what it meant. We had to give a speech. And for many, that was panicky. I remember, Bill, I failed another time in high school. I was laughed off stage. I was a hubristic young boy who thought I could do anything. And I got into this public speaking contest, didn't prepare, and was laughed off stage. I got complete stage fright because nothing I was saying was making sense, even to myself. I just hadn't practiced enough. I bombed to the point where the moderator of all the other speeches was making jokes about the one person, me, who couldn't speak up on stage. So fast forward 10 or 15 years in Minnesota, I went into Toastmasters at the Mayo Clinic.
Oh,
They had a
yes.
Toastmaster club, and I practiced public speaking for 10 speeches to overcome both the dismal failure and the actual fear that came with that failure in getting in front of people to speak. Because as a leader, you have to be able to communicate.
Yep, yep.
So that was an enormously beneficial thing. I don't know if you consider that leadership or not. It's identifying a problem, a gap, and dealing with it. So I did that, became a Rotarian in Minnesota for the first time. And, I did other leadership programs. There's another one, Ascending Leaders in Tech was the latest one I did about 2 years ago. It was put on by Goldman Sachs. And it brought business CEOs of startups and small companies together to teach them business management leadership skills, right? Reading a balance sheet, understanding investment opportunities for your business, the resources that are provided by the community and by banks to help you out with those sorts of things. And it focused on a special project to grow your business. So I did that. So these are some of the exposures that I've had over time to leadership, Bill.
So when you're thinking about, like the original tech support team that you built,
Hmm.
or any other team since then, I tend to think about behavior, and with your psych background, this will go right down that alley for you. Um,
Okay.
what behaviorally did you find worked really, really well, or didn't work so well with the people on your teams?
Okay. Let me see if this is behavioral or not. A lot of times a problem comes up and the sky is falling in a business. There's a client that's upset, or there's a mistake was made somewhere and it's had repercussions and everybody wants to solve it, right? But nobody really understands the root cause of the situation. They understand the symptoms, right? When you say, I have a toothache and I have a lot of pain in my mouth and I can treat it with ibuprofen, that's treating the symptom, not the cause. And if you don't treat the cause, you're going to get an abscess tooth, right? So
Right, right.
I think the skill that I brought and the thing that always I try to focus on is diving into the issue to its root cause. What's the origin of this problem? What are the facts that are known? And what don't we know that would help us understand this better if we went and found out? And not to speculate. So, on these teams, right, if we're in a support issue and there's a major, maybe there's an outage, people are throwing ideas out about what it could be. And, oh, last week there was a denial of service attack and it was, North Korea blew up the website. Nobody can prove those sorts of things. And it was speculation. So, you say, well, just a minute now. We have a firewall with logs. Why don't we go look at the logs and see what's really going on here instead of speculating, right? Get to the root of the problem and knowing what the right question to ask is. And Bill, I'll be honest, I didn't always have the right questions to ask, but I kind of knew who to go to get the right answer. Like if it was beyond my ability to troubleshoot a firewall, let's say it wasn't in the logs, we looked, there's nothing in the logs, but definitely there's something wrong with the firewall. Go to the developer that works in that area of the firewall. Okay, Johnny, we have a real problem here. We've got 2 or 3 customers. The firewall's dying and we don't know. There's nothing in the logs we can identify. Could you take a look at these components just to see if there's anything untoward happening? And then, yeah, we can get to the root of the cause. So being open to not having all the answers, knowing who has the skills to help troubleshoot it, and really going after the root causes is one, I think, of the most important parts of leadership. To cut through the noise in a
Yeah,
crisis, it really helps.
yeah. I like that. There's a couple things that really resonate with me. One of those is not not being what's the word I want? Not being stuck in the idea that we have to have all the answers. And I think that's um a superpower is being able to go, yeah, I don't have all the answers, even though I have the title, and and other people, have the answers. I think one of the side benefits of that is that it helps people on your team feel ownership of solving problems.
Hmm.
Um, and people that feel ownership are, um, they're more self-confident and they're more intrinsically motivated and they work better, it's at
Hmm.
the end of the day. The other thing is doing the internal networking to know who to go talk to when you need to go talk to the engineering. I think that's one of those non-obvious ways to do better as a leader,
Hmm.
because the back channel of knowledge, there's information you pick up from other people that won't come through the normal chain of command.
Right.
And I think that's my experience has been that that's consistently given me a better handle on what my teams are doing and why they're doing it and how we help the rest of the company. because I'll hear something from sales or marketing or support and be like, oh, wait a minute, you guys, they keep talking about some problem that, oh, well, we could fix that.
Hmm.
My team knows how to solve that problem, get rid of the issue, and make them happier. Um, and just because the game of telephone and the way that works, it doesn't come through the chain of command. So I'm a huge fan of that back channel. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's predicated on being a genuinely curious person and also a good listener, because we all know that person that is just waiting to interject and get their point across. They're not a good listener. And when you think about networking and understanding people's skill sets, if you're only about yourself and what you know and what's in your head, you're not going to learn that network very well. It's not even going to open for you. If this
exactly.
person doesn't know, wants to listen to the answer of the question they just asked, then why am I bothering? Right? That's the ideas that go through people's head. So you have to be a really good listener and you have to show genuine curiosity and pay attention to what you hear, because there might be an opportunity for you to do a favor for someone based on something they need that they might not even know you can help with. Right. And it might not be you again. You might just know, hey, you're in support, engineering, they're both struggling with this. Hey, finance person, if we just paid a little bit of money for a tool, then development would be better, support would see this more, and the communication would open up. It would solve everybody's, major problem leading to issues. And so that could be a way. That's what I think leadership is, connecting the dots in a very opaque work environment.
Yeah, no, I like that, and it goes back to the networking thing. You got to talk to people, and yeah, you're this is bouncing all over the place, but it pops up in my head at the moment. When you're talking about public speaking and getting up on stage, I, I think that's such an interesting and Toastmasters. I think that's such an interesting path to go down, uh, um, because especially in the tech world, I think so many people in tech have some level or other of social anxiety,
Hmm.
and the it sounds like the things that you did, whether on purpose or not, were really good tools for not having social anxiety and having a high degree of social competence.
I think you're right. So bombing on stage in high school, not intentional. That was complete and utter lack of preparation born out of an overconfidence in my own ability. It
Mhm.
takes practice, it takes dedication, and it takes preparation to come off well in a public speaking event. You have to have practiced and know what you're going to say and practiced it and tested it with people and then heard feedback. It also requires you to drop a bunch of common mistakes that people make in speaking. I would like, a lot of repeat words, of filler words. You notice I can pause between statements. I don't have to fill every void with sound. I think about what I want to say and then I say it, right? These are common principles taught in public speaking. Knowing the appropriate way to prepare for a public speaking engagement just gives you confidence that you can do it if you put the work in. So that's pretty much essentially it. And then there's a certain amount of social recognition of people who have been there and done that, right? Even in this Ascending Leaders in Tech, we all had to give a speech. And some people were stressed for a week knowing they had to give this speech. And the amount of nervous energy and mental anxiety that they went through, you look at that and you say to yourself, it's enormously deleterious to your health, to even your ability to prepare. If you're not in the moment and you're worried about the future failure or stress of it, you can't even practice properly. So I recommend to anyone that ever wants to do presentations or public speaking or sales, Toastmasters is a great way to overcome your anxieties, to learn how to entertain people while communicating clearly, and to make what you say sound intelligent and sound meaningful to your listeners.
Yeah. I I really like that. I think having those backgrounds in communication is one of those. I think it's an area in the tech community that we don't hear like people don't talk about it often enough. They talk about, you have to learn the latest programming language. You need to learn how to run AWS. You have to learn AI prompts. But at the end of the day, we're all talking to other people. And if you can't do that part well, then I don't think anything else really matters.
Hmm.
And
You're not wrong. I'm laughing to myself, Bill, because I thought I was a pretty good speaker and I could write good enough prose to communicate. But AI has humbled me so much. I've taken some of my governance policies recently and I've started to work them through AI. And I have paragraphs this long that are shrunk to this level. They're more clear, they're bulletized. And I'm like, what the heck was I trying to do here? I thought I was pretty good, but AI just sort of cut to the chase and said, no, 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 you're being effusive here. You're being this here. You just need to say what you want to say. And so there's room for improvement in everyone and everywhere.
yeah,
I'm sure of it.
which AI are you using for that?
Well, I use a combination of OpenAI's ChatGPT. I often use that for little quick queries because it's pretty responsive. And then Claude, Anthropic's Claude has been my go-to for sort of bigger, deeper thinking. And it's been really good. There's actually a nice tag team where you ask ChatGPT to create a prompt for Claude to accomplish this goal. And it'll write this wonderful, elaborate prompt that you can cut and paste into Claude. And then you can modify just a few little things that maybe it got off on a wrong tangent, or I want this perspective, or I want this emotional empathy in there. And then Claude is great at taking that instruction and creating something very meaningful.
So interesting. Okay. Fascinating. I just published and part of the reason we're talking about this is like I'm picking your brain here. This is awesome. This is the whole point of the podcast, is to feed my curiosity. I just published a book on getting over social anxiety. Um,
Wow. Okay.
it's first book I've written, and I used to have really bad social anxiety.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I came up with a system to get over social anxiety, and I've I've taught it to a bunch of people after I did it on myself, all the way to now I like public speaking.
Nice.
Um, but I used Claude as my editor for the book. So I wrote the book and then I went and said, "Hey, I'm working on this book." Um, we went through an outline and I had one to begin with, and I said, "Here's how I think it goes." And it was this really easy conversation. And then,
Hmm.
chapter 1, and as you said, there was a bunch of stuff where I was like, "Oh my god, um, this is so short compared to what I wrote before." And much more approachable and, like, compelling,
Digestible.
digestible.
Compelling, digestible.
Yeah,
We think that people's attention spans will follow all the way through a 30-word sentence, right? But it
yeah,
won't. They don't.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you've got to break it up for people to understand. Sure, if you're talking to a PhD about rocket science, you have to be very specific and have these great big complicated sentences sometimes. But I think in communicating everyday ideas, social anxiety is an everyday idea. You want to keep it short and impactful and digestible by the people. Think about eating an elephant. You can't eat an elephant, but for
exactly.
one bite at a time.
Yep,
So
yep,
if you have this big, huge elephant problem of social anxiety, you can only break it down into little bite-sized chunks for people to bite and digest.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things where I was very happy with the results.
Hmm.
Um and other experiments that I've done with AI have not played out the way that I hoped.
Right.
And so, it's one of those things where it's like any other tool, figure out what's going to work effectively. Um, and you got to experiment and fail, and
Yeah.
go, oh, this doesn't work very well for that. And so away we go. Um,
Can I make a public service announcement about that topic and AI in particular?
of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. For people listening to this, they did a study of doctors who use AI in two ways with their patients. One group of doctors used AI to create the diagnosis. The other group of doctors used AI to confirm their diagnosis for the patient. And they've watched them over time. The doctors who confirmed their opinions, their diagnosis within AI, saying, I saw this patient, he had these symptoms, and this is what I think the problem is. Did I miss anything? They performed miles ahead in the long run and were able to cope with unique situations much better than the doctors who used it to make the diagnosis. In other words, they were transferring the responsibility off of themselves to the AI to diagnose things versus thinking through the problem. And those are two enormously different, like there's a divide there that grows bigger over time for anyone using AI. It's like students, or another study of students who wrote a paper without AI or the internet. Another group used only Google. Another group used AI to write a paper, and they wrote the paper, submitted it. And, the papers that were written by AI were soulless, according to the readers of the paper. Just no personality to it. It was sort of just very matter of fact, that sort of thing. But the big news of that story was that they brought the students back 3 weeks later or 3 months later, I don't know which, and they said, tell me about your paper. And the AI writers couldn't tell you a thing about it. The Google writers could at least summarize what they talked about, but not in depth. The people that wrote it without any research help from Google or AI, they could recite it almost not verbatim, but they knew
right.
open
Right.
with this, middle, and conclusion. The point here is this: as leaders, as business owners, and as people in society that are now trying to figure out how do we work AI into our lives, you can do it like any tool out there, a very sharp knife. You have to respect it, or you could cut yourself and
Yep. Yep.
damage yourself. If you use AI as a crutch, you may end up dumbing yourself down over time. If you use AI as a tool and you use it carefully to confirm your own thought processes, you're going to sharpen yourself. You're going to be smarter over time. Okay. But it can be misused. So be aware of that if you're hearing this.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's, yeah, it's like a sharp knife. And you said, you got to pay attention and think about it, and think about, I tend to think in terms of, this is what this tool will do right now, and it's effective at it. And, the sharp knife that I use to cut up meat might not be the same sharp knife that I use to cut a loaf of bread.
Right. Exactly.
And the context and the optimization and I'm going to experiment with a serrated knife versus a straight edge knife and see how they work in these different, and you learn. It's not a one and done.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
It's not one size
level.
fits all.
Yeah, yeah,
There's different tools for different uses, right? You're
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
right.
yeah. And I think recognizing that there's levels of skills with things is really helpful. And that just because you find a tool that's really good at one level doesn't mean you're done,
Hmm.
right? Um, it's Alex Hormozy has this thing. He talks about math and how, the teacher that got him to do multiplication in second grade was really good at getting him to do multiplication in second grade, but the one that got him to be doing algebra 3 years later didn't make the multiplication teacher a bad teacher. It's just that was the level, you know? And
Yeah.
whenever you hit calculus, it's another, you know, you're moving up the levels. It doesn't reduce the value of the other places, you know,
Right.
and the other skills. So yeah, yeah, I like that. It's very cool. So what is the company you're doing right now? What do you, just because it says laugh and learn, I'm like, and
Sure.
and cybersecurity, I'm like, I really got to hear the story about this. It's been in my head
Absolutely.
since I saw the background.
Sure. So, what we know about cybersecurity is that a lot of people find it boring and uninteresting, and they barely do their assignments in any company of the world. Apathy is rampant. And when you look at it from a multidisciplinary approach, why is there so much negativity around cybersecurity training, around phishing, and around these breaches that occur? Why is this still happening all the time, every day? You realize, well, I've realized, and our company CyberHoot has realized that cybersecurity is a very immature field of study. Let's say it's been around 40 years at most. Compare that to legal, which has been around for 1,000 years or more. Medicine, solid 200 years with, folk medicine going back thousands of years, of course. Uh, Plumbing, electricity, 100 years, 200 years, maybe more. I was just in Istanbul, and the Romans built these aqueducts to ferry water in from 500 miles away to Constantinople when Constantine declared Rome's headquarters is going to be here. And they built these aqueducts to bring water in. Oh my God, what an amazing story. Without any machinery, they did that over 1,600 years ago, in the year 300, maybe 1,800 years ago. Amazing stuff, right? But what we realize in cybersecurity in its young age has got some growing pains. It's been really focused on stopping these bad behaviors that lead to breaches. But it's been doing it in a tunnel vision that doesn't work. What do I mean by that, Bill? The majority of tooling on the market today sends fake email messages to the inboxes of you and me to see if we can spot the fake message before we click on links in them. And the messages are created to impersonate vendors and to request with emotion and urgency that we take an action to secure the business, or to pay an overdue fine, or to correct something that is just a moment of your time to fix. But it's all a ruse to trick us and to show us what can happen if some hacker did that to us. And
Right.
it's not really an educational experience. It's a negative experience. It's a punishment and shame-focused experience where you clicked, Bill, so you got to go talk to the principal, and they're going to, you're going to get chastised and maybe detention for doing so. That does not change behaviors. It doesn't. No one in the world of psychology, education, and I hope very soon cybersecurity said, punished behaviors are extinguished. They just don't extinguish these bad behaviors. What you need to do is replace those behaviors with good behaviors that you reward and you gamify and you make fun, so that, because the number one problem we have done is we've trained our entire population of users with shock collars. Make a mistake, zap. Make a mistake, zap. And so they've given up trying to learn. They're like, I don't want to get zapped again. I'll just forward it to IT. That creates apathy, and it creates disengaged employees. It also creates a negative culture of don't say anything. Even if you click, keep it quiet because you don't want to let people know you made a mistake. That's a problem. Instead of all of that, if you look at psychology, 75 years ago, B.F. Skinner, you may have heard of Pavlov's dog. You ring a bell, the dog salivates because it's going to get food. Well, B.F. Skinner said rewarded behaviors are repeated. It's as simple as that. That's operant conditioning at its finest. In our psychology degree, I trained a rat to press a lever, get some food. Press a lever, get some food. If you do a 1-to-1 ratio, the rat will press it a few times until he's not hungry anymore and he'll stop. But if you do an intermittent reward schedule where you press the lever 10 times, you never know when you're going to get that pellet of food, but one will come out. And if it's not predictable and truly random, that rat will press that lever for hours and hours and hours and get enough food, more food than he wants, truthfully, because it's intermittent. He's not sure if he's going to get enough, so he has to keep pressing.
Right.
So when you take these positive rewards and you go laugh, learn, hoot up, we're taking that psychology approach, that educational approach to say, let's give you assignments, Bill, that reward you for good behaviors. When you get a phishing assignment in CyberHoot, we walk you through the 6 or 7 components of an email, and we ask you individually with help on the side, is this sender safe or suspicious? And if you're going through the first time, we tell you, hey, you're looking for little single letter differences. That's called typo squatting. Someone might put a period in the wrong spot or change an in Microsoft, Amazon into an R and an N if they're side by each, they looks like an M unless you really, really pay attention and zoom in. And so you need to do that zooming. You need to pay that attention because that's how hackers hack us. So we walk you through, you get to choose and pick and choose. And if you successfully navigate this, you pass the test. Otherwise, you take it again and we give you more help. And eventually you're going to pass this test. And then we reward you with placement on a leaderboard within the company. There's 50 people, you're at 22. Let's see if you can get to 10. Okay, we give you an avatar that starts as a hatchling and then it grows into this magnificent owl. Then it gets a shield and a sword and a helmet, and it's showing your progression of cyber literacy skills. We give you certificates of completion, 15 minutes towards your industry requirement of 10 hours of ongoing continuing education credits, right? You have to do 10 hours a year. We can satisfy 6 of those. We're doing everything we can think of to make it short, fun, gamified. The idea being, I hate working out at the gym, but I love playing sports. The outcome's the same. And if I play, I'm secretly getting in shape, right? But I don't know it. I don't dread it. I don't moan about it and complain about it and want to quit. I just go do it because I love it and I'm getting in shape. But if I had to work out every day, I wouldn't want to do it. So this is the idea we have as a company. Everything we do is all about making it more fun, engaging, entertaining, but educational. Keep the lessons short. If we do a 45-minute window, remember how we talked about 30-word sentences? We have to keep videos at 2 to 3 minutes to keep people's attention and be very purposeful that we're going to cover one topic and then move on for the next month to another topic. So all of this is designed to teach cyber literacy in a way that people hear it, that they wish to participate, that we eliminate the shame and fear-mongering of these other tools that are designed to stop the click, when in fact, the only way you stop something is by focusing on a positive behavior that will educate people, teach them. Here's the best analogy. I like to say that those things feed you a fish today, PHISH, right? And maybe you're not going to click today on something because you were fed a fish today. But what we do is we teach you how to fish and we feed you for a lifetime. And it sticks, it's internalized, and the outcomes are your own, not because of some avoidance of punishment, but because you want to learn this for your personal life and your professional life. That's it in a nutshell. CyberHoot that's what we focus on.
Like that. And I like that approach of the making entertaining and fun, and the, short videos, because short attention span theater is where we're at today.
Yes.
And that totally makes sense. I like that. That's very cool. What got you there? Are you the founder?
I'm the co-founder with 4 of us. There's 4 of us. That's an interesting story about failure as well. About 14 years ago, Bill, I was fired from a very high-end job at a bank. I had been competing with another person in the same position for 18 months to see who would ultimately keep the position. And I lost, plain and simple. Probably people skills weren't quite where they were today. And, my leadership in the corporate office of the bank didn't even make it to my first day. They had resigned. They hired me, resigned before my first day. So I had zero support. I
Wait a
can
minute.
make all
Wait,
sorts of.
back up. Your leadership resigned after they hired you?
So there was a gentleman who hired me from the corporate office to oversee a division of this bank as the security lead. The local VP of that division hired a CISO to also work side by each, and we were going to make sure that everything was buttoned up. There was zero risk, all that stuff. And before I even began my first day, my boss in the corporate office resigned and left and went to somewhere else. So I didn't
Wow.
have a boss the first, say, month or so. I was just eventually assigned to someone else. Long story short, I was fired. And I don't think it was justified, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to argue it because it led to the very best possible life-changing experience for me. I said, I'm done with corporate America for now. I'll go back one day, but I think for now, I'm just going to do something unique and something that I feel is from within me. What can I contribute to the world? And I had this multidisciplinary background. I had psychology. I had 20 years experience in cybersecurity by that point. I had education. I was actually enrolled in teachers college because I love teaching people. When you teach something, Bill, you get to a real deep level of understanding of that topic, right?
Right. Yep.
If you want to understand something, teach it. Because when you explain the mechanics of something, you have to really go deep into the knowledge base of that material. So I was in teachers college and I decided that was just not going to pay the bills, unfortunately.
Right.
So when I founded CyberHoot, it was the perfect center of those three rings: psychology, cybersecurity, education. In the middle was CyberHoot. And fortunately, I found three co-founders that believed in it as much as I did and had unique skill sets that clung on to ours to fit into making a viable company.
Right.
And thanks to those other people and their diligence, we've been very successful.
That's awesome. I love that story. That's very cool. I like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. What kind of companies are your target audience?
Anyone that uses a computer. Honestly, enterprises, we get told, people tell us, oh, it looks like you focus on, small to medium-sized businesses and MSPs. Well, we have, because that's been the easiest market to crack into and to tell the positive reinforcement story, right? There's a mounting body of empirical research that says what I talked about as the wrong approach of punishment and shame doesn't change behaviors. The outcomes are poor. And it ends up costing a lot of time and resources to set up and administer and manage. Well, enterprises, they're risk averse to changing from what's been done a certain way for 25 years. It must be right. It isn't. So it's a little harder nut to crack, but we think enterprises is the next frontier for our company because, number one, they have cultures that are not supporting this. If you see something, say something, and without fear of reprisals, right? There's a little, like some banks, not the one that I got fired from, but some banks I've heard, you have a 3 strikes rule. If you click on a phishing email that the IT team sends out 3 times, you fail it, you're terminated. What kind of a culture is that? That's horrible,
that's horrible.
right? You wouldn't want that. So you really need to pivot from this punishment and shame culture to positive reinforcement, engagement, wanting to do these stuff, personal and professional development, all of that. And so we're perfectly and rightly situated. We have a patent we filed on this whole technology of the engagement model of phishing. We've just got our first rejection letter on the patent, which is actually a good thing because now we know what the patent office, the U.S. Trade and Patent Office, has said they think is wrong, and we're allowed to adjust things, and we're going to resubmit, and hopefully we'll get a patent on this because what we're doing is very unique. With that patent, with a SOC 2 audit assessment this year, which we're zeroing in on a date for that, we'll have everything that an enterprise needs to maybe take that leap of faith and say, yeah, we want to positively reinforce our employees at our bank, at our company. We already have banks using it. They're just smaller regional banks. But enterprises can use us, mid-market can use us, small to medium-sized businesses can use us, managed service providers, managed security service providers, CISOs and virtual CISOs can use us. The best part about our tool is it's 100% automated. So there's no heavy lift to administer it, to deploy it. It's 100% automated in multiple ways that none of the other tools on the market are. Most of the tools, when you send these fake emails, you have to punch holes in infrastructure to get that email through to the inbox, because this is designed to block phishing attacks and fake emails.
Yeah.
And we're just saying, here's an assignment, and it goes right through those emails to the inboxes of users. The user goes to a browser-based walkthrough of an email. There's real hyper-realistic examples of phishing attacks that we've seen from the real world mirrored in our platform. When you punch holes, you actually dumb down the email a lot with the domain names that you're sending from. And so the users are actually being trained on the wrong materials. They're being dumbified or stupefied because it's not accurate to how hackers hack. We avoid that. We avoid all of the negative, cease and desist letters that Microsoft and Amazon and Zoom and Facebook will send if you impersonate their logos too closely or their domain too closely. They'll send it to learning management vendors like us and say, you have to stop impersonating us forevermore. And so it's kind of a dirty little secret in the industry that happens all the time. And so we've avoided all that because we're in a browser, essentially
right. Yeah, that totally
not
makes
a
sense.
report. It's a complete fictitious environment. Users tell us they love it better. We got 90% positive ratings on our videos. We have about 75% on our Hootfish exercise, the patent pending exercise. So it's really coming across positively. I think it builds rapport with your IT team, who is here to empower you, not to punish you, right? You don't want an adversarial relationship from your bank IT department to your employees.
No.
You want it to be empowering and positive and value-driven. So that's what our tool does. And there's just no stopping it once it catches fire.
Cool. This has been awesome. Thank you. That's very cool.
My
I like
pleasure.
it. Yeah. This has been super fun. I really appreciate the time. I'm looking at the clock and going, okay, we're about to run out. Any final words?
Well, I would love to say, if you want to see a demo, go to cyberhoot.com and book a demo right from our homepage, or email sales@cyberhoot.com. Bill, what's the name of your podcast? 40% Better?
40% Better. Yeah.
So if you sign up for CyberHoot with your business, even for a free trial, you have no obligation, but sign up for a free 30-day trial. If you stay, it's month to month. And if you sign up with 40% Better, we'll give you 20% off for the year. So as an incentive and as a thank you to having us on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.